Hello Year 12, good morning. I'm going to run you through a few of the key details for your coursework. This video is an accompaniment to the document that I've uploaded to MS Teams, so it'd be a good idea to have that in front of you. Now for your coursework, you've already studied the Bloody Chamber and you know it pretty well. For your essay, that is your non-examined assessment, you're going to compare the collection of short stories, The Bloody Chamber, with one other text. Your comparison of these two texts will be an essay of maximum 3,000 words long, and you'll hand in the final draft of your coursework just before the Christmas holiday, December 2020. Obviously, you've only done the half of the coursework at the moment by having read one of the texts, so what you need to do now is choose one of the 3 books from the list that I've attached in the document, and you're going to read it over the next 3 weeks. Consider the text very carefully before you choose which one to read. Obviously feel free, and it'd be great if you would read more than one text if you want to have the opportunity to weigh up the different options. If you've got the time to do that, I'd highly recommend doing it. 1 week per book, I think that's potentially doable. So you must purchase or acquire your own copy of the text. Be a bit resourceful with this. Some of them are available free online. In fact, 2 of the texts I've recommended are available free on Project Gutenberg. Others you might have to purchase or borrow from a friend or a library. Of course, if you're borrowing a library book, don't annotate it, so it's probably best to have your own copy so that you can scribble notes in the margin. I'd always recommend abebooks.co.uk as a great website to get second-hand books quite cheaply and delivered quite quickly. So ensure that you make an informed choice about which text is going to be the best for you to compare with Carter's collection of short stories. You know where your strengths are analysing the Bloody Chamber. You've written those 1,500-word essays on the collection. If you know that you are really into Marxist analysis, for example, then as you're reading the second text choice, think about how Marxism might come into it. That's going to help you later to develop your coursework question. As you read, you also need to make notes comparing the book with the Bloody Chamber. And to do that, in the document that I've uploaded, you have got a worksheet, a table, with a series of things, including motifs and structural devices and context and all the key things that you should be looking for anyway when you're reading the text. But this table will help you to take those important notes, which will form part of your coursework. But it's also the work that I need to see submitted to me by the 15th of June on MS Teams, so that I am confident I can see that you have read the second text effectively, thoroughly, but also so that I can then give you feedback that's going to help you to form the basis of your coursework essay. So the 3 text choices that you should consider. We've got The Taming of the Shrew by Shakespeare. Now, you've obviously studied Othello at A-level and you've looked at plenty of Shakespeare's in the past as well. Possibly you've not encountered The Taming of the Shrew. The main plot is debated hotly by many academics whether it is anti-feminist, because it's about a woman who is referred to as a shrew because she's very demanding and very difficult to get along with for the male protagonist of the play. Others have argued that in fact it's a very shrewd, no pun intended, commentary from Shakespeare on the gender dynamics of the late 16th century. So a really interesting read. You could use a lot of your knowledge from studying Othello, apply it here to this comedy. Inverted commas, you might want to debate whether it is a comedy or not. And there are, of course, feminist strands within the play that you could draw out and compare with the Bloody Chamber. So that's option number 1. Option number 2, Beloved by Toni Morrison. This is set after the Civil War in America. It's inspired by the story of a real slave, Margaret Garner, who escaped slavery in Kentucky in late January 1856. So there's obviously a real narrative of oppression here, primarily because we've got the main character Seeth's role as a slave, but also, of course, her role as a woman and indeed as a mother form the basis of that narrative. It's a very, very powerful book, full of magic realism, might be one of the key jumping off points for your comparisons with The Bloody Chamber, and certainly not a light read, but a very profound read, one that I guarantee will stick with you after you've read it. The final option then is one which you probably know other classes are studying, The Great Gatsby. Where other classes have been taught it as the comparison text, I wanted to give it to you as one of the three, in fact 4, I'll talk about that in a moment, options for your second text. Great Gatsby is a classic, of course it is. F. Scott Fitzgerald writing about a millionaire running around on the east coast of America in the 1920s, gallivanting and ultimately chasing the woman he once fell in love with to try and win her back. So it's both a love story but also a biting satire on the capitalist mores of the early 20th century. So you can think about the way that that might prove useful to compare with The Bloody Chamber, thinking, I gave the example of Marxism earlier, it's a Marxist reading that you would do to compare those two texts. I mentioned that there's a fourth option. Now, this is one to treat carefully, but some of you I know are particularly ambitious and will have some great ideas about an alternative text that you might want to study, not one of the three that I've recommended to you. And I'd love to hear what those potential choices are. Now, you will have to propose your choice to me. I'm not just going to say go ahead and write it without advising first whether I think it's an appropriate text choice or not. You must have approval from me of your text before you start reading it, because I don't want you to waste your time, but certainly before you start doing any work on the basis. Now, if you are going to choose a text, say, for example, you've been, I don't know, reading the Lockdown Lit book club recommendation Swing Time, and you think, yeah, it'd be a fantastic comparison with Bloody Chamber. That's wonderful. Propose it to me. What do you think the point of comparison will be? Obviously, you don't have to go with Swing Time. You can think of any text as long as it fits a few criteria which I've laid out in the document. I'd like to have a close look at those because EdXL, the exam board, are very strict about what you can and can't do with your choice of text. So, for example, and there are a number of things you can't do, but for example, you can't look at children's literature or youth literature. You can't do something that comes up in the GCSE specification. I'd like you to read those instructions really, really carefully if you are considering writing about a text that isn't one of those three that I've recommended there. And I'd be really interested to see what you come up with as your choice. Final thing then, the piece of work that you're going to do as you're reading this text. You've got 3 weeks to read it, plenty of time to read a novel or a play. You will be writing comparison notes, thinking all the time about how it is similar or different to The Bloody Chamber, and I've given you a few pointers for the kind of things you should be comparing. The coursework is, of course, a fantastic opportunity to develop your independent learning skills. It's really well suited, of course, to this school closure period, and it's possibly, I imagine my year 13s from last year would attest to this, possibly one of the most exciting bits of work you get to do because you get the most freedom. So I'm really excited to see what you come up with. Please do feel free to email me or contact me on MS Teams if you've got any questions about these text choices, and enjoy reading them. I'll see you soon.